Hey there. I'm Ken Marshall, Chief Growth Officer at RevenueZen, and I've got a big update on a new solution that we've been working on internally. If you haven't been living under a rock, it's no secret that generative AI tools are pretty much eating everything, and that's no different in marketing. I remember back in November 2022 when ChatGPT was on, I think its second iteration of the model, and immediately thinking about all the different applications and potential solutions to build. And so fast forward to now, and we've just taken those initial ideas that I had, that our team had, and we've used it to improve our own internal systems to be more efficient, to get rid of a lot of what SEOs used to charge for as busy work, and most importantly, to focus our human big brains on important strategy work. So, with that being said, we've actually created a new content offering that leverages your internal experts. So, think the founder, the CEO, a product manager, somebody who's really leading the charge in the day to day knowledge of what the company offers, custom GPTs, and in tandem with a knowledge base that we build based on your own documentation and information specific to your brand and messaging, with interviews with those experts to generate expert-led AI assisted content is what we're calling it. And I can hear you now. Well, Ken, we don't want any of that AI fluff or slop. And my answer is, of course not. Neither do I. But the reason why I don't is not because of subjective thought or how the content sounds. It's because that kind of mass-produced nonsense is against Google's guidelines, and most importantly, doesn't generate any qualified leads, opportunities, or sales for your company. With that being said, really, this offer is only launching now after 2 years of publishing content with these ChatGPT, Gemini, Writer, Copy.ai, Jasper, all of these different tools in the real world to see, not only does this content perform well in Google search, but also does it resonate with your target audience and target customers, as well as on our own site. So this didn't come out of nowhere. And most importantly, the system that I will describe a little bit later on is really where the magic happens. And so not only does Google explicitly state in their spam guidelines what they don't want and what they don't promote, but they also have what are known as helpful content guidelines. And they explicitly call out that there are ways to use automation and generative AI in order to produce content that is helpful and, most importantly, allows your target audience to complete their jobs to be done. So what does this all mean for you? Why should you care? Well, there's essentially five main pillars that we feel this new type of subject matter expert led AI assistant content of how it benefits you and your campaign. And the first is just faster turnaround time. So when we have to ship iterations of, once you give us feedback, right, we have 2 rounds of edits, and we have to ship those back and forth between your team that's busy, between some of the writers, especially for more in-depth, meatier pieces. The turnaround times can be way beyond the 2 to 3 weeks that we have outlined per month of our content creation process. And so we wanted to find a way to speed some of that up and also those edits. The more you can publish content that's high quality, that serves the user's job to be done, the better outcomes are going to happen for the site in a shorter time period. Less back and forth on revisions. And so one thing that we found is when we upload the editing guidelines and your business's brand documentation, we can quickly, using these AI tools, we can quickly measure that against, does this hit that one specific part of your messaging or not, which saves you time, saves us time, and again, focuses on production. We can achieve the higher outputs of content production at the same cost or a lower cost to you. And so this one was at the forefront of my thinking, and I'll touch on quality in a bit, but getting production to a point where you can keep up with the market, because let's be honest, our competitors are not only experimenting with these solutions, they're deploying them at scale and working on their own technology every day. You can have a more consistent brand voice and alignment to that brand voice. So sometimes as humans, we can be kind of squishy with well, does this sound good? Well, I'm in a certain mood, and so I don't like this tone, but you have trouble describing what that tone exactly is. So we can download those specific things about your tone, about the positioning, about paragraph, title structure. Do you like Oxford commas or not? And run that through our editing using generative AI to make sure we really adhere to those standards objectively and subjectively. And then most importantly is content quality, which we all care about. So writers are fallible just like a tool is. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. But by leveraging your product manager, the founder, the CEO, the VP of marketing, taking the transcript from the conversation with them or the Q&A answers, using that as the basis to take 70, 80, 90% of that conversation verbatim to create the content completely removes any of the telephone game of this content sounds like us or isn't quite on the mark from a technical perspective because it's coming exactly out of the brain of the expert and only being modified slightly by the tool. And that's the magic of all of this. It's the scale that we want of production, the quality and specificity of your unique brand messaging, while also staying technically accurate because the content comes from an interview. And to me, that's really the key cornerstone of this new solution. And lastly, you're probably asking yourself, well, Ken, you're saying all these words, you're talking about all these things. So how does it actually happen? How do you achieve this? And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and walk you through it. So, as a standard part of our engagement during onboarding, we don't start anything until we make sure that we understand your business model, your positioning in the market, and who your target customers are. Without that, it doesn't matter what traffic or keyword rankings or even leads that we generate because they're unlikely to be qualified and close in a reasonable time frame. And so that's why even with this process, we start off by our customer research and business model deep dive, which is after we have our kickoff call, after our intake form. It's a separate call where we work with your customer success manager, your salesperson, the CEO, VP of marketing, whoever has the unique insights about your customer journey and business model. And these are just a few of the types of questions that our strategists are going to be asking of, who's involved in the buying process? Is it a committee? Is it an individual? What things come up most as pain points and use cases that they mention? What are their jobs to be done? Customer success, what frequently asked questions do they have during onboarding? All of this information we gather, we take notes, we highlight things where it makes the most sense, where all of your team members are doubling down, and we store this information for later as the basis for all of our research and analysis. After that, you'll work with our content manager on, if you already have brand messaging or verbal identity guidelines, working on extracting the specifics around our what things could influence our content strategy. But some folks don't have that really well defined. And so on a call and then separately after the call, you'll work with our content manager to really understand, how do we want to sound? Who do we want to emulate? Who do we want to be different from? What terms do we always use? What terms do we never use? What's our unique competitive positioning? What's our value proposition? All of that will be codified in this document and able to be referenced later on. And this is just a standard part of our engagement as well. And it's always a living document, something that'll be updated as time goes on. You have insights, we ask good questions to help you clarify. And so this is really where things start to form as far as how you want to sound and how we can make sure that every piece of content that goes out the door sounds exactly like you. After that, we'll begin to gather examples of what really makes not only your brand unique, but the person or people that we're publishing on the site underneath. What makes them unique? What are aspects of the way that they talk, their unique writing style, their speaking style? And so as I mentioned before, we're going to be using ChatGPT's custom GPT feature to build a knowledge base and to build a generative AI tool that specifically speaks like you, thinks like you and can give us the kind of outputs that we want from the interview transcripts. And so this is an example of one of those documents for yours truly and my KenBot. Again, we use the exact same processes internally to generate our own business that we're going to be using for your campaign. And so I've got some instructions here about who I am, my core messaging pillars. Obviously, the first one being that SEO is about revenue, not impressions or clicks or rankings at the end of the day. And then some examples of the gold standard of what I want to sound like. This is all from me, successful in LinkedIn posts that I've written, text messages, Slack threads, emails that I've sent to team members that they all seem to enjoy, communications that really capture the unique nature of how I want to sound. And from there, this really begins to build on top of the customer research deep dive that we did and the content guide, the verbal identity guidelines, to start to build that knowledge base that I talked about that will inform the custom GPT. And then lastly, as far as the documentation process, we will pepper you with questions and requests during the onboarding process of, do you have ICP documentation of your target customers? Do you have sales transcripts and exports from Salesforce or HubSpot? Have you done customer surveys, onboarding surveys that we can just take and start to round out the picture of who we're trying to help, how we're trying to help them, and specifically what we do that's different from anybody else in our market so that we can help you stand out with the content strategy. And so this is an example of our decision maker framework and who our ICPs are. We have company attributes, the size of the company, psychographic data of what they believe, that the types of folks that they are. And really, the more of this that we can get from you, the more precise the outputs from your own custom GPT will be. Right now, for the fun part, y'all get to meet KenBot, and I'll take you under the hood in just a second. But just to show you why creating these GPTs is at the heart of what we do, it's the foundation, because it doesn't just allow us to write things and edit things. We can take this, and RevenueZen does, to repurpose content for YouTube or X or Medium or LinkedIn or an email newsletter. And so, just for fun, who am I? What is my job? And how do I sound? We also want to be able to not have to ask annoying questions to your SMEs all the time. So, if you have some existing knowledge base in Google Drive or Notion, we can ask product specific questions to the GPT instead of having to send 100 over Slack each day. KenBot knows that I like to be a little bit cheeky, sharp, direct. I use a lot of anecdotes, very practical, and I don't really like fluffy content that doesn't have a lot of purpose. And so knows who I am, what my job is, who RevenueZen is. And yeah, I do love positioning all of my content as if I'm talking to a friend over coffee. You can do other things like extract insights from previous content. So if we did an upload from or a download of your LinkedIn post, your Google Analytics 4 content, what are your two favorite LinkedIn posts from me and why? And so we can also pull in examples, internal links. We can use CRM data to generate unique insights within the content at scale without all these extra costs that are associated with, hiring a data analyst. And so, yeah, I went to Italy with my wife. It was a great trip, specifically pulling out insights. And if I wanted, I could say, give me the text verbatim and insert it into this new blog post or this new case study that I'm doing. And then third, I'll take an example of a transcript that I did because this gets to the heart of our new content offering. This is an interview from a video that I did about how founders can create content that drives business outcomes without a lot of budget or resources. And so if I just ask to take this video recording and create a blog post using my unique style examples from the past, we can take this transcript and turn it into something that, meets somebody where they're at. If they want a strategy guide, if they're at that top of funnel, purchasing journey, we can integrate this into a competitor comparison. And in the section where what does RevenueZen excel at, maybe it's for founder or series A or B startups and how we think about content strategy. And so it's going to take this and begin to start to outline a piece of content, which we can then expand on or even repurpose for another channel as well. So I'll let KenBot continue to do its thing in the background. But how does this work? So we'll go ahead and put together a set of custom instructions. So KenBot was designed to help me create content, to edit my own content, to edit my LinkedIn posts, and then to take my transcripts from podcast interviews and videos that I've been on and make them into insights that are more digestible. Basically, whatever we need, the strategists need for our engagement, those are the actions that we'll program into the custom GPT. And as you can see in the knowledge base, I've got LinkedIn post data. Sometimes I'll upload data from GA4 or HubSpot. I've got information about who is RevenueZen, our internal employee overview of who we are, what we do, who we serve, how we're different. I've got in best practices as far as how I like to write my LinkedIn hooks. I've got a checklist of what we call excellent content, where we run every single thing through this checklist based on feedback we've gotten, industry best practices, Google's own documentation. And so I can do all these different things because this exists in the knowledge base and we've set the custom instructions and the specific pre-programmed prompts to deliver exactly what we need for your campaign. So once we have the custom GPT as a foundation, now we can start to integrate this into some of our existing best practices. So we'll have a content outline for every piece of content. This is the research, analysis, and strategic lens through how we create and deploy content that'll actually generate new business for you. We don't just want to start writing. We'll take into consideration, what's our focus topic? Um, what's the search intent here, right? Whether it's generative AI search or Google search, Bing even, there has to be what is the actual searcher trying to accomplish? What are the search results like? Is there an AI overview? Are there snippets? Is it just 10 blue links? Are there ads? Is it a video? We have to make sure the format of the content is correct. Who's our ICP target? What kind of content is this? Is it new? Is it an update? What's the unique information gain? Where can we contribute to the conversation that's different than the existing results? And even an outline that we'll use as the basis for our interview with the subject matter, your subject matter expert internally. And we'll send this to you ahead of time so that you're prepared or you can give us the answers to these questions that will then feed into your GPT that will take those responses verbatim and reconfigure them into our first draft. So I've got an example here. I get asked a lot about the future of generative AI search, generative engine optimization, which, if you want to learn more, just go look on the site. How we can leverage this for our existing services. And so I answered these questions exactly as I would if I was interviewing a client. And so we can see a format like this works best for some people, written Q&A versus live. But sometimes we'll get on an interview and we'll ask those questions live because some people prefer to talk about the solutions. And once we run it through the GPT, and this was ran through Click, or not Clickbait, that's a funny title. This was ran through KenBot and unedited. And so we have two more layers of editing, but just to sort of show you an opening statement that just states exactly what's happening in the market right now. An introduction to who I am, my position at RevenueZen, what I believe, some of the pillars about what's happening in the market, what people can do about it, inserting quotes verbatim throughout the article of that are really punchy or that bring the topic home. And this is a full 2,300 words, which is pretty meaty and I think gives a lot of context to this question that a lot of people are having. And as I mentioned before, this content is also stuff that we're testing different formats all the time. This was a research report that I put together for B2B professional services and consultants, since we work with a lot of them too, of how the market, not just from search, but organic growth marketing in general, is changing for 2025 using ChatGPT's deep research filter. So on top of voice notes that I sent the bot, on top of the deep research feature that we took these ways that we can add to the conversation that competitors don't have, and we get this really in-depth roadmap of why things are different based on unique research, what the market is saying, what the market isn't saying that we believe, and so on and so forth, all the way down to elements that they can take advantage of in 2025 that are going to allow them to grow with these market changes in the future. So, all in all, we really believe that there are some use cases where a writer, especially a writer with specific product knowledge or knowledge of the offer, is still critical. But we also believe that for a large variety of content types and the types of content we help our clients create, particularly top of funnel, middle of funnel, that there's an opportunity to take your subject matter experts internally, take their knowledge, and through the use of a structured research process, a structured content brief from our SEO strategists, an interview with that SME, their transcript, running it through a custom GPT trained to sound and think exactly like them, that we can get a content asset that really hones in on what we call excellent content, which is search best practices, what your target audience needs and expects, and then your own uniqueness as a brand. And now we found a way to scale that in a way that passes on those savings really, as in terms of efficiency and cost to you the client, and allows our strategists to go from checking boxes and doing busy work, which things were 3 to 5 years ago, now to focusing deeply on how do we generate more pipeline from this stuff, how do we stand out, how do we architect a content strategy that meets buyers at every step of their journey. So give this another watch, give it a think, and I'm always happy to answer questions, really help you understand why I think that this is the way forward and how we're using it internally. Cheers.